fun.
Hey, all right. Welcome, everybody. It is Wednesday, 7 o'clock. Time for Sci-Fi Distilled. Welcome back, Mary Beth, and welcome back, Kent. Didn't we just see you?
I'm a bad penny
Bruce
youth.
is back. So tonight we are doing the three, well, it's not really three Dune movies. We have two Dune movies and a miniseries. Or a two-part Dune movie, Dune movie and a miniseries.
And the Dune and the movie that never was.
My question is, why is there so many Dune movies?
Because it's that good.
Yeah. Okay. We'll leave that up to our guests to decide, so to speak.
Yes. You guys
welcome Dennis and Martin are already on. So, Mary, before we get started, though, Mary Beth, I think you have some news for us.
I have news. Hello, Christopher LaRoche. The Shadow is here. The news. It is 7:01. Time for news. Wednesday, and I don't just mean that's what today is. Wednesday on Netflix gets season 2. Ooh, I love that show. That's it. Netflix has made it official. Jenna, probably they got season 2 because everyone and their brother was doing Jenna Ortega's choreography to either the Cramps Goo Goo Mush or Lady Gaga's Bloody Mary, like on TikTok and Insta Reels and YouTube.
You know what was interesting about that is before they released season 1, it was a lot of people, the critics didn't like it. It didn't get very good reviews, but then as this happens quite often when the general public watched it, we all loved it. So,
but I mean,
this is why I don't. Hey, Willie, nice to see you.
Hey, Willie. Going into it, this is meant for like teenage girls. Just know that going in. But it's still
show. I don't care what it's meant for. I think it's meant for anybody that just wants
to.
There's not a lot to
not like it. Okay, let's moving on with the. Yeah, exactly. Moving on with the news. The Renfield trailer, whatever it is. It's a vampire comedy with Nick Cage. Why should I people are going gaga over this? I don't know why I should know it or like it. It releases April 14th, 2023. The only other vampire, and this isn't about the vampire, it's about the vampire's assistant. The only other vampire comedy about his assistant that I know is 2009's Cirque du Freak. The vampire's assistant, which is a really cute little.
There's been that character has been made comical in other, not necessarily a whole series or movie, but
I guess when
they've done comical vampire movies, Renfield always ends up being.
Okay, well, someone can clue me in later. A new Star Trek comic has confirmed the dark legacy of Enterprise's Captain Jonathan Archer. I'm only reporting on this because it's a comic. It's not a TV show, but I'm reporting on it because they may have crossovers to the TV show. And I'll be very curious to see. This comic is on sale now. And what this thing does is it picks up right after number one, Una gets arrested, which is where we left off on Strange New Worlds on the TV show. And in this thing, in this comic, Pike's like, okay, we got to help Una. So let's go over to some Illyrian colony or whatever. And when they get there, I guess Spock is like, hey, man, just so you know, before you beam down real quick, about 100 years ago, Jonathan Archer stole one of their warp coils. Okay, good luck. Bye. Energize and sends them down. So I'd be very, very curious to see if any of this makes it into the live action show. Star Trek Strange New Worlds, The Illyrian Enigma, number 1 is on sale now from IDW Publishing. And it's written, by the way, by Kristen Beyer and Mike Johnson, who have written a bunch of stuff for Disco, Strange New Worlds, etc. Speaking of Star Trek, hot on the heels of Michelle Yeoh's Golden Globe win for Everything Everywhere All at Once, we are once again wondering, will there be a Section 31? And once again, Paramount's like, yeah, it's in development, I guess.
Do we need a Section 31?
I mean, at this point, here's the thing, is since her gig as JoJo. This woman has done everything everywhere and won a prize for it.
Yeah, she's exploded.
She's doing everything. She did The Witcher Blood Origins. She did Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings from Marvel.
Yep.
She did School for Good and Evil. Like, she's doing all this stuff. She's going crazy.
She's been around before, but
come on, Paramount.
More people. She's getting more major roles, I think, before she. I mean, we saw her way back in the 90s as a James Bond girl kind of thing.
Well, where we saw her, speaking of Michelle Yeoh, a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon series is in the works, and that's where I first saw her. Deadline reports that writer and producer Jason Ning is developing a new take on Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon for Sony Pictures Television. Ning will adapt Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and the other 4 novels in Wang Dulu's Brain Iron Pentology, which was published between 1938 and 1944 and chronicles the struggles of 4 generations of Yusha, a type of ancient Chinese warrior folk hero. And it probably will have a lot more of that really cool. You guys remember in Crouching Tiger, it had that really cool, like, they were fighting through the air. Like that was
one of the things that would made that movie so popular. Was when they really started using a lot of those wire effects.
Yep.
And that's kind of what put that movie on the map.
And it did win an Oscar.
The effects for that, yeah.
In other fantasy news, Deadline is now reporting that the Dungeons and Dragons series, which enlisted Red Notice director Rawson Marshall Thurber to write, executive produce, and helm, has been given an 8-episode straight-to-series order for Paramount Plus. See, Paramount Plus can get stuff done when they want to, just not Star Trek Section 31 stuff. Paramount Pictures has also got Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves coming to the big screen. They are being developed in conjunction, but we don't know how the two will relate. Not finally, but in other news tonight, Francis Ford Coppola's sci-fi epic Megalopolis is said to be in utter disarray. The Hollywood Reporter is saying that it has descended into chaos. The visual effects team has departed the movie. The production designer left and the supervising art director left. So I don't know. Coppola decided to fund the $120 million movie himself, but we don't know what's going on. That thing was meant to have starred Adam Driver, Natalie Emmanuel, Forrest Whitaker, Lawrence Fishburne, John Voight, Talia Shire, Shia LaBeouf, Jason Schwartzman, and Dustin Hoffman. Wow. I don't know what's happening with that.
That's a hell of a cast.
It should be an interesting movie if it gets made. Ant-Man and Wasp Quantumania trailer dropped over in the UK. That's great. All the boffins on the internet will look at the American one and the UK one and see what's different, and then try to figure out what the plot of the movie is just from the minutiae that are different. And then finally tonight, in the category of things that are only entertaining to Mary Beth, if you want to laugh at something delightfully wholesome, I'm going to put a link, or ask me and I'll send you the link. Check out Japanese actress Ria Ote. Just so you guys know, over in Japan, they are still making monster movies the way they always did, with an actor in a suit stomping on models. And this little behind-the-scenes clip shows actress Ria Ota in her monster suit stomping on the models, and she goes, stomp, 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 stomp. And it's so freaking cute. You can hear her voice, sweet, darling little voice, in her big kaiju suit. And I have images, I have visions of the director being like, oh no, you don't have to roar, we will dub that in later. And her just being like,
she's having fun with it.
And I love it. That's the news for tonight. What do we have to drink
tonight? We have, I figured we'd go with, it's called a Dune. It's kind of weird. Bailey's Midori. The Baileys and the Midori were throwing me off in milk.
And vanilla.
And Village Knob. It's kind of a weird combination, but hey, it's called a Dune. So
all right.
Figured, it's got to fit.
Hey, you got to it's going to be very parched out there in the desert.
There was one called the Water of Life or something, and it looked really interesting, but it was so complicated. I couldn't fit all the instructions on one page.
Be happy
we had to go with something
glass and not in your suit, people, not in your still suit.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so this is obviously a very popular book. It has been for many, many years. It has had many iterations of screen.
Nice one, Bruce.
Very pretty.
So we're going to discuss the different versions, and now Kent and Bruce are obviously big Dune fans.
Kent and Bruce are tonight's resident experts.
Resident experts. Yep. I am another Dune movie, yay! It's let's make another Spider-Man origin, or another Fantastic Four that sucks, or
Let's start with asking you, and you, Mary Beth, have you read the book?
I have read the book. It's
Okay.
been 40 years since I read the book.
I have to tell you guys, if you have seen the movies and you have not read the book, maybe don't bother reading the book, because every significant scene, I already have a mental image in my head, and it's not doing it for. I don't know, man. Everything I needed to know.
If you're gonna,
everything I needed to know was already in one of the movies.
That applies to any book that's been adapted to a movie.
Willie, you says read it at least 3 times.
If you see the film first, all you're ever going to see are those actors and the way they say in the lines, and because it's already imprinted in your brain. So I mean, that we're pretty much go for any of them. But I think if you've seen the movies, there's no really reason to read the book.
Oh.
And go ahead, let us know, Kent, why I need to read this book. Willie says read it 3 times, so
Yes, the book is. First of all, it's not an action book, and I think we touched on this before we went on air. It is layer upon layer of political combined with OPEC.
You froze there for a second.
Sorry.
Sorry to say that so over
again. Layer upon layer of political.
It was good when you froze.
All right. So layer upon layer of political intrigue. This was written just as OPEC was starting to become a world player.
Yes, this is an analogy for.
What year was the book written?
65. Sorry, 65. It was published. He was working on it for a decade before that, but it is one of the first spelled out ecological cautionary tales. It is, again, political intrigue of every conceivable political party. It is a cautionary tale about technology. It's a cautionary tale about religion. It's a cautionary tale about drugs and drug use. It is so many levels that it's been considered unfilmable up until people took a shot. I won't say single-handedly, but it was definitely responsible for me getting into the study of political science. It's way more than a popcorn movie, and I despair it ever being done completely correctly. The sequels, Dune Messiah, and Children of Dune, and God Emperor of Dune, as far as I'm concerned, God Emperor of Dune is unfilmable. Really, really, you can never bring that in a way that would matter to the screen.
Doc E was just saying the movies try and cannot capture the multi-layers and the inner life of the characters, especially Paul. And Doc, right before the show started, we were chatting, and I was saying that I didn't feel that the movies did a good job at all of explaining what was happening to Paul. Like, you understand when you read the movie, you understand what's happening to Paul, but the movies don't clarify that, I don't think. But maybe discuss.
And again, I think the Lynch version, the 84 version, did the best job, at least explaining the universe to the uninitiated. To me, I felt like it gave more background as to what the whole universe was about, whereas I think the other films, the current one, didn't do that. That's just my.
I mean, it's interesting, and what Kent said is right. I mean, there's so many layers in this book, and the political intrigue. But it's also in some ways very right wing. People always look at this as this very left wing book, ecology and stuff like that. But they very, very clearly say that people can't separate from their environment. And if you become too soft, it's not gonna go well. What Paul puts them on is a very, very hard road. And the easy way is not the way that leads to ultimate survival. So it's very interesting that way. There's just so many layers, and in a 2-hour film, you maybe can get one or two of these messages across. You just can't get the entirety of it. It is so intricate and such. And Mary Beth, I understand what you're saying. You read the characters like you've seen them on the screen. I'd still read the book.
Oh yeah.
But one of the reasons that it's very difficult to film is this thing contains a glossary. This thing contains
Yes, it has
internal monologues, maps.
Yes.
An
Lynch
ecological
tried.
notebook.
Lynch kind of tried to do the internal monologue, but
It didn't work. As I was saying earlier before, my sacrifice for this show tonight was to watch the David Lynch 1984
I
version,
did too.
and I suffered through that. And Mike, you're right saying, you know, it explains things, but it's like taking Lawrence of Arabia and, you know, bringing it down to a Dick and Jane level.
I understand what you're saying about that, and how the book, and usually that's for most books, is that the books are much more intricate and there's much more detail in the books that they can't, because you have two problems. One, you have usually roughly 2 hours to tell this story.
Yep.
So you can't get into the nitty gritty. So something's got to go. And I think, again, particularly with the 84 or any of them, they're trying to hit a broader audience than just the hardcore Dune fans that are really into this. So it's hard to tell that story, and you have to have some kind of action in it to keep people more interested, I think, at least for a cinematic version. I think the television versions you can get a little, especially with like the miniseries, can get a little bit more. Maybe the miniseries or a TV show is a better venue for it, because you can stretch all that out and get more detail into it.
And that's a good point, Rizzo. A longer form, even a television series, not just a mini series, might be the way to address that.
The limited series.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, because I found that in terms of the story and such, and I've seen the most recent ones with my wife, who's not a Dune fan. The miniseries, even though it had longer time, really didn't explain the story and the background and the political intrigue.
Not like they should have.
What were they filling their time with?
It was much more the personal, much more the smaller scenes, much more the, more on Arakeen and Paul growing up and stuff like that. It was the smaller stuff that they really concentrated on.
Did they? Because I'm good with the couple movies. I'm not good with the miniseries. I had to give both Lynch and Villeneuve credit for pulling entire conversations exactly as written. You know, just pulling them out of the book and dropping them onto the script. Okay,
well,
after there's your words. Did they? Well, yeah, but did they do that in the miniseries too?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Like I said, I thought Villeneuve really did justice to the background story, and it wasn't necessarily as clear as Lynch made it. But it was brought out in a way that you didn't feel like it was being spoon-fed in like I said, in the Lynch version. But it came out in a way that was natural, and it didn't feel like, well, now you've spoiled the whole plot. Because in the book, this is things that are discovered, that, oh, look, the emperor is actually involved in this. Oh, look, it's actually a much bigger scheme to try and rid the emperor of these two annoying houses.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting.
So again, going back, so a long form would also be able to, there's a lot of backstory or things, like you said, going on in these people's heads. And I think you would be able to kind of tell that story more detail than you could. Like I said, the movie, you just don't have enough time to cover this in 2 hours. And it goes for a lot of books that are complex.
Oh,
This
yeah.
book is very complex.
Stuff gets dropped.
It's not an, I don't want to say it's a difficult read, but it's not a read that it's like, oh, you just rip through it. And like Willie said, you got to read it like 3 times.
You
Really
through it, but
So, it's just a very complex story. And it's just not, you're right. It's just not easy to tell visually. I think it's just very complicated. And I think from a screenwriter perspective, it probably was quite a challenge to do it as best they could. And obviously they think there's a market for it because they keep making these things.
keep doing it. Yeah. Yeah. Because they've got, like you guys said, they've got the layers of politics, layers of religion, layers of the metaphysical. And
I had said, this for years. I always said that Foundation, such a great book by Asimov, never could make it into a TV movie.
It doesn't.
And the TV show series was good, but it really wasn't the book.
It wasn't Foundation.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I've said, one of my life's goals is, if I got a time machine, everybody has different things that they would do with a time machine. Go back and tell yourself what mistake not to make. I would go back in time. I would buy about 20 copies of this, go back to 1980 and hand them out to Dina De Laurentiis and Lynch and a bunch of them and say, please read it.
Well, can we touch on, or I
You're
touch
assuming
on?
they didn't.
I
know
think they
they
did. I
didn't.
think everyone read
Yeah,
it.
we know they didn't.
I don't know. I want to touch on, because Phil was like, you guys going to do the Jodorowsky version. And I was like, oh, haha, there is no Jodorowsky version. But there kind of sort of is. So the very weird filmmaker, Alejandro Jodorowsky, he's Chilean French. He did El Topo and he did a couple of other stuff. El Topo is an acid Western. Like, it's some weird out there, like out there stuff. He was going to do Dune. And if you guys are into Dune or you're interested, go check out. There is a documentary on how it didn't come to pass, but it talks about who he pulled together to do this. And it talks
H.R.
about
Giger.
So it's interesting. They made a documentary about a film about how
that didn't happen. They made a documentary about a film that didn't happen. It was Dan O'Bannon, Chris Goss, Giger, whatever his name is, a bunch of guys. And it didn't happen. But if he hadn't attempted Dune, we never would have Alien, because it's the same crew that did Alien.
Yep.
And then this was 1974. We might not have had a few things from Star Wars, because some of the things from Star Wars were pulled right. He has his hand drawn storyboard in book form. It's massive. It's about this big, like this, and he opens it wide this way, and you read it across, and it's the storyboard for the entire movie. And some of his shots have come to life on the big screen, just not in his movie Dune. Like, some of his stuff have all come to pass. And he wanted to do things that the technology wasn't there back in the day. He saw 2001, and he's like, yes, Douglas Trumbull. And he came to America, and he got an appointment with Douglas Trumbull, and he met Doug Trumbull, and Doug Trumbull was like,
we can't do this.
We can't do this. And then he saw Dan O'Bannon, because Dan O'Bannon had just did, I can't remember, one of them, something out there, space something. And he's like, yeah, this guy. And so he got him.
O'Bannon worked on Dark Star, I think.
Dark Star, that's what it was. It was Dark Star.
Yep.
He had seen Dark Star. He's like, who's this guy? Dan O'Bannon. So he went and got Dan O'Bannon. But if it hadn't been for that, like, he put together a phenomenal, if you guys are curious who's going to play what part, I can let you know that stuff too. He put together this phenomenal crew, and he got it right. And then they just didn't. They just couldn't get the funding. No Hollywood studio believed in his vision or would let him do it. But he if it hadn't been for that movie that didn't happen, so many other movies never would have happened. It's phenomenal. I highly recommend this documentary. It's called Jodorowsky's Dune. Go check it out. Alejandro Jodorowsky, Jodorowsky.
Interesting.
Yep. The production art, Giger went nuts. He's a twisted dude to begin with, but
he's interviewed in this thing, and he's an interesting dude.
What he did for Alien.
Yeah.
I mean, alone.
Yeah, they turned him loose for the Dune thing. I mean, some of the art is frightening.
There's a dark corner of that man's brain that you don't want to go to.
Oh yes, and he sounds like it. Like, when you see him in interviews, you're a little bit like,
he's definitely got something. There's something not right.
But anyway, yeah, guys, I highly recommend it. But let's get back to the Dunes that do exist. Let's
do it. Let's start with 84, the Lynch version. And okay, so you guys obviously have very strong opinions on this film. I don't think it's that bad. I think Mary Beth doesn't think it's that bad. I didn't think it was that bad when I saw it back in 1984.
Some of the production design.
Again, let me preface my thing. My opinion of it is not coming from an average movie viewer, not from a huge Dune fan. I don't remember which came first with me, if I read the book or I must have seen the movie first. I think I read the book later.
And I think that has a huge effect.
But I mean, for 84, I thought it was entertaining.
They did the best they could with what they had.
I think I agree with you, Mary. I don't think it's as bad as people, at least the hardcore fans, are making it out to. This is kind of like when, you get people arguing Star Trek, this one's good, this one's bad, and it's all kind of where your perspective is.
Well, I'm going to throw down the gauntlet here and say, I went back and today watched it. I also looked at some of the reviews, and dear Lord, it was universally panned. And it was, and I don't I don't always take stock that, reviewers are everything, but boy, talk about your panning. And
But
I went into this with the idea of, dear Lord, it can't be as bad as I remember it. It's been 30 years since I've seen it. It's got to have some redeeming qualities to it. It is as bad as I thought it was.
The Christ knights
but
look good.
did they ban it because it wasn't a mainstream movie? Because I think they clearly missed the mark in two ways with it. They didn't hit the mainstream very well because it was too weird and complicated, and I think it didn't hit the hardcore Dune fans because they missed so many things.
And I think that's
where it fell in the middle somewhere, and it just. So the critics probably weren't huge Dune fans.
I'm going
to argue watched it from the average movie viewer and went, "What the hell am I watching?"
I'm going to argue that Lynch made a poor choice in choosing, and Villeneuve didn't do this. Lynch made a poor choice in choosing to include those inner monologues because he put his actors in a really tough spot. Because how many scenes is just the actor with a blank face or kind of like looking off while their own voice is like played over, and they're just like.
Well, yeah.
And it's just there's nothing to watch. There's nothing to see. And I guess we are supposed to be learning plot information from the voiceover, but mostly you're like, what is this melodramatic crap?
And the voiceover, and again, I tend to run and watch things, so I tend to have the closed captions on. So I was watching this on my pad, and I had the closed captions on. Thank goodness, because they actually put those things in brackets.
Oh,
otherwise, I kept thinking.
So you just sat there and watched people stare off into distance.
Well, and again, I think
but they have them in the brackets there. You still hear them, but they're in brackets. So you say, that's inner monologue. That's not Paul turning to Jessica and whispering this, which a couple of times I thought.
Oh, and he did change a few things. Yeah, that's true.
But I think that's a good point with all those. The movie moved very slow. And I think, again, for a mainstream audience, it wasn't.
Can I? Yeah.
I really think, and Kent back me up or not. To me, this is two stories. There's the Paul and the political intrigue, and at the court, and going to Arrakis.
Kind of Bill. Sorry.
Yeah.
And then there's going into the action in the second part, and I think Villeneuve hit that. Where most people would think the natural barrier is
separated, yeah.
But in the Lynch version, the first part seems to be going along at a leisurely, normal pace.
And then what happens after Aaliyah is born?
And then the second half is like, if you blink, I think my wife actually asked me a question. I looked up, I looked back down, going, "What the heck's going on?"
She's born, and then next thing you see her, she's at the Emperor's harassing him.
Yep. Yeah. 2 years later.
Just like that. And if you didn't catch Lady Jessica giving a line of dialogue that says she rapidly, you didn't know. You're like, who is this little kid harassing the Emperor? Yeah, it was cray-cray. That part was cray-cray.
Well, because that would have added another half an hour.
Yeah, exactly. I think because they had that 2 hour, back then too, and you remember now we're so used to a 3 hour Marvel movie. And we don't think anything about it. This was already long. I don't even know what the running time originally was, but
it's over 2 hours. It's like 2:17 or something.
2:17. So, that was a long movie for 1984. Anything between 90 minutes and 2 hours was about the average. And you start getting over 2 hours, people start looking at their watch.
Yeah.
And we've seen, if you ever watched The Offer, which was a great on Paramount Plus, which is about the making of The Godfather. One of the reasons Paramount was freaking out about that movie was because it was so long, and they have to fit so many people into so many showings per day to turn the theaters over to make money. So this is all taking, this nowadays for some reason they don't seem to care as much. I don't know why. Maybe just because the studios say we're going to make a 3 hour Marvel movie and you're going to sit through it and not go to the bathroom.
Bruce has some great points. Chris LaRoche is saying back then everyone was looking for the next Star Wars. Yeah, this thing was actually marketed as Star Wars for adults.
Mm-hmm. So, and I think that probably hurt it again because people were expecting pew pew pew, and that's not
pew pew. Well, there's a little bit of pew pew.
There is. I mean, especially at the end when you get the worms and stuff. That's kind of when I think it really gets fun, if you will, if you want to say that anything, if that even applies to this movie.
The whole thing is like just battle.
I mean, we wanted to see the giant worms and that whole bit at the end. So yeah,
I think Lynch did 50 what he had. I don't know. I'm okay with the
I found the Sardaukar especially, the production values were just it was bad. I mean, guys in the green masks with they it looked like a welder's mask or
Did
something.
you see the Bene Gesserit? The Bene Gesserit wearing these, like,
Yeah.
all the costume designers, I don't know what they were thinking, but the Bene Gesserit were, I can't even show how tall it was. These tall hats.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
great.
They made some design choices that didn't foster understanding.
And I think it put people off as well. I think people were so staring at things and looking
Yeah.
at it was too jarring.
Like
I
the
was staring
guild
at the color.
navigator, they didn't need to show the guild navigator. There's no guild navigator in the first book at all.
That is a really great point, because the whole time the Guild Navigator was on the scene, I was like, this is so like Doctor Who. Like, it had that quality to it.
Yeah.
And
You know what I
the
mean?
thing
That
was,
quality.
that
But I
whole
think
scene
they
was there for-
because I think again they needed to explain why the spice was so important.
They could just
That's
narrate.
the
They
whole
already
point
had
of
so
the
much narration. Just
I
narrate.
know you could have, but I think I agree. I agree.
Princess Irulan, that's
but
Virginia
it was an
Madsen.
interesting
You go, girl.
the way they moved. They got them all in this, like, whatever, in this giant, all these tubes that go into that. The way they did it, I thought was kind of neat, and it just jumps to the next planet,
And then unloads everybody.
Instantaneous thing, but I think that was why they needed to really reinforce why the spice was so important to everything, because without the spice, everything shuts down. You can't go from anywhere.
that whole scene was never in the book, and it was there for exposition. It was there to explain the story.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
and to me that put me off on the wrong foot right at the beginning, because I was saying before the show, the Emperor, this is the Emperor of the universe. He's supposed to be, the master manipulator and everything like that, and he comes across as being cowed by the navigator. And the explanation is very, very quick, and
Yeah.
I'm going to explain my plan to you and everybody in the room.
And the Bene Gesserit. Oh no, she got dismissed. So
She got dismissed.
because I know you think the Emperor was the master manipulator, but I actually think the Bene Gesserit
They
are
are.
the master manipulators.
They absolutely are, and they're going contrary to what the Emperor wants. But the other thing is, the Bene Gesserit don't have telepathy, and don't put her out in the hallway. We don't want her around.
Yeah.
And then she listens in through
But
her
both movies showed that, or was it that hand spider creature thing that told her what? No, they dismissed that. She had a way of hearing. Both movies gave her a way of hearing.
Bene Gesserit are master readers of people.
Yeah, they can read the slightest twitch of your left eyebrow and read into it a great deal about what you're thinking and what you're doing and how truthful you're being. They call them truth sayers. The whole reason that
Only one category of them are truth sayers. There's other categories of them.
Okay, yes, but all the high level Bene Gesserit are all truth sayers. You can't lie to them.
Sort of. All the high level emperors and house heads have a Bene Gesserit truth sayer.
Right, but I'm saying all the upper echelon of the Bene Gesserit are all truth sayers. You can't lie to them. They know what you're thinking, and they know that you're lying to them. That's why the Emperor has one around to advise him when somebody's lying to him.
And
But the whole reason the Baron had to be used as an instrument, and they were hiding the Sardaukar as Harkonnen troops, was so that the Emperor could say to the houses, hey, I didn't have anything to do with it. I lent them some troops. They did their thing. I don't know anything about it. And get past a truth sayer, because technically he's telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth sayers that work for the other houses could all say, yep, he's not lying. So the Bene Gesserit are wound into all of the great houses. They have married their daughters off into the great houses on a number of occasions, Jessica being one of them. Margot Finring, Countess Finring is another one. Wellington Yui's wife was Bene Gesserit.
Was a Bene Gesserit. Yeah.
So they're scattered throughout society, and they're all working for this secret plan to produce a male Bene Gesserit. And nobody else knows they're doing that. Everybody else thinks, hey, they're useful. They can tell when people are lying. They are aiding our society in a number of ways. They're very educational. They set up schools everywhere to educate the natives. And at the same time, they're working on this master plan to create the supreme being, and almost pulled it off within a generation. They missed it by one generation, sort of, kind of. Anyway, read the book, you'll get that. But
we get Jessica and Paul and all
Yeah.
that.
So
But the actual thing is, and this sort of goes to my comment about the films, the one character that none of the films have really gotten right is Jessica.
yes,
Because they throw her into this damsel in distress mode, and she is a fully trained. In fact, the Reverend Mother says, this was one of my best students. This was my top student. She needs to be in control the entire time.
Yep.
She should be
they're so lethal. They can move a single muscle if they need to. You ever thought about how hard it is to move just one muscle in your finger? It's impossible. You and I could never do it. They do it. They practice it all the time. So if they need to move one single muscle to kill you, they can do that. They can read you. They know what you're going to do before you do it, because you're broadcasting it from your body the entire time. If you glance to the left, they know you're going to move left because they already read your face and saw what you were going to do. They in a lot of cases, they have implanted voice controls in people. They can say a single syllable or a couple of phrases and make you freeze rigid in shock, and then do whatever they want to you while you're shocked. I mean, they are master secret agents. And Jessica's at the peak of that performance, and they never address it.
So, all right. We've talked about what you guys don't like about this film. Is there anything that you do like about this film?
The design of the Christ knife, I think they got... There I go again. The design of the Christ knife in the Lynch movie was pretty good. I like it better than the ones that we've seen in the Villeneuve movie.
But the Villeneuve one actually looked like the teeth, so it kind of worked.
Think about how big those teeth are, so you have to carve them down.
Yeah, it's only like the tip of the teeth, or something.
No,
the still suits have been looking good in both movies. You buy that's a system that will retain your water, and you get to drink out of it. The ornithopters in the Villeneuve were done very well. They're supposed to flap like birds.
Yeah.
That never showed up at all in the Lynch movie.
Yeah, the ornithopters were wrong in the Lynch movie. I'll give you that.
They're a box.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if that again was a sign of a production choice. And
the limitations of
the limitations of technology.
Although, I was watching Jessica and Paul crash in the ornithopter, and I think they were auto rotating, and I don't think those wings would auto rotate. They could glide maybe, but I don't think they would auto rotate.
No.
But the Lynch one certainly, I think a lot of their design choices has influenced more recent movies and stuff. So I applaud their design choices. I think their choice of Duncan Idaho was much better than Jason Momoa. I did not buy Jason Momoa as a grizzled soldier, master SEAL type person.
Do you see him as king of the ocean?
Well,
so Duncan Idaho was supposed to be a sexy man who was a grizzled warrior, but the women would throw themselves at him. So I think that's kind of what they were going.
I think we got Jason Momoa, Jason Momoa.
He's got a roguish good looks in the book, and they at one point Jessica suspected of having a quasi affair with him.
He was the Lancelot.
Sir Lancelot, exactly. He's the Lancelot character, and turns out to be extremely important in later books. But
I think Richard Jordan worked well in that. I don't know. In the Lynch,
I thought he was good in that.
You remember he was a lot younger then too. When he was.
I liked Lieutenant Picard taking a break from Starfleet and being around.
I liked the Yui in the Lynch movie more than I liked the Villeneuve Yui.
You liked Dean Stockwell. He was Asian. You liked Dean Stockwell.
Well, Wellington Yui wasn't necessarily Asian.
Yeah, he was. That was pretty clear in the book. That was like there was a whole argument how they whitewashed Dune. Lynch whitewashed Dune.
Oh yeah,
And
absolutely.
and I'll give Villeneuve the credit there. He put things back the way they should have been. But it was Asian.
The one thing I really liked about the miniseries was instead of going with sort of the spectacle that Lynch went for, he tried to make it he succeeded in making it otherworldly by using mainly a European and especially Eastern European cast who just did a little bit differently. So yeah, he still had great design. I thought much more practical design than Lynch, but he toned it down and kept the otherworldliness with the characters and the accents and that sort of thing, which I thought was really cool.
So let's talk about that one. Let's move on to that one next. So we're talking primarily about the miniseries, which was on the Sci-Fi Channel, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think I liked the best out of the three. I don't know why. I think it was. I'm not a really fan of like I said. Not a big fan of the current one. But not that I just hate it, but I think this was the better of the three, for whatever reason. Again, I haven't seen it since it originally aired, though. So I will admit.
I certainly like it better than the Lynch one.
Yes,
we can see it as a complete picture because it does have an ending as opposed to the Villeneuve one. So yeah, to me, it's really up there, and I've heard people pan it, and it's like, no, it's actually I think a lot closer to the book. Yes, it's a TV miniseries, and so the effects aren't as grandiose as they could possibly be. But I think in a lot of ways, it's a lot truer to the books, though they still missed some aspects of it. And like I said, sort of that big political picture seems to be the one that took the hit. I don't know, Kent. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And like I said, for me, that's the guts of the book. The whole fact that Paul and his family are trapped by their circumstances. They have their own planet. They could just hole up and be a rogue house, but they've got to do what the Emperor has commanded them to do, which is go and make Arrakis be productive in spice.
Which
and they put their foot in that bear trap knowing it was going to be dangerous. And the whole rest of the universe was aligned against them, and Paul is the only survivor. There's layers and layers there that just have not really ever been brought to the screen the right way.
Yeah.
They're trapped rats in a maze going for the cheese because the cheese is the only thing that's going to save their family, and they don't know that the cats have all banded together against them. There's all of those nuances. Mm-hmm. Duke Leto knew he was a dead man. He'd hoped to come out of it in order to talk to Paul and mentor him and all that good stuff, but he knew going in that he was a dead man.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point. There's a lot of layers to the politics, but again, I think that's probably why it had to be cut, because it was very difficult to translate that to film in a way that would keep the story moving at a
right without having one character say to another, without having a character say, as you know, the Duke is being forced to do this.
Right.
But one aspect, and I take exception to something you said, Kent. The story is that Duke Leto was one of the most popular head of houses around. He wasn't standing on his own. He was manipulated into a position that he would lose face if he didn't follow the Emperor's regards or
right.
order.
But you will also notice that none of the other houses who saw it happening did a thing.
But it happened so quickly, and that was part of the thing. Was it needed to happen so quickly that, hey, it's a done deal. Sorry, over.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of that. You're right.
So, like I said, that you're right, Kent. That side has never been addressed adequately, and it's really the cool side where you start realizing, oh wow, he was in on it. Oh wow,
they were in on it.
There's no way of anybody trying to get out of this. And same for the Harkonnens as well. I mean,
and they're as trapped because as soon as as soon as the Emperor pulled it off and got the Atreides out of the way, the frickin' Harkonnens were next.
Well, they'd already been weakened by
by fighting the Atreides. Yeah,
by fighting the Atreides.
Yeah, the other houses were all like, hey, if the Emperor can side with the Harkonnens against the Atreides, he could side with anybody he wants against any of us. So we're all now running scared. And, oh, look, he's going to pick off the Harkonnens? Well, then they needed to be picked off. So that's a good thing.
So about again, I want to stay on for a few more minutes.
The miniseries, I think, was the best
miniseries one. So what did you guys think that one got right? I mean, you kind of touched a little bit on it, but I mean, anything specific?
Well, they gave a lot more time for the story to develop. It wasn't an half an hour to show Paul get to Arrakis, and then an hour for them to lose everything and get exiled to the Fremen, and then an hour getting used to the Fremen and becoming a really good one, and then an hour of using all of the Fremen to fight the Sardaukar and take over from the Emperor. Those each needed to be a week worth of television
right.
to be done right. I mean,
it's interesting. This is why I've always thought it was interesting that they keep going after this, and this forbidden fruit, so to speak, to try to get this thing made to a quality that it's going to work for everybody. And
because we can't get everybody to read the book.
Well,
I think
there's also that, can't you take something out of the book? I take something, somewhat different. I'm much more into the social Darwinism and how humanity's evolved in these different ways because of their circumstances and that whole side of it versus the political intrigue, which I liked, but it wasn't sort of the main focus for me. So I think that's the problem is people take a look and say, you completely missed the point of the book, because the point of the book for me was this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, the whole point of the book is Paul's transmutation.
Right.
Paul's the point of the book for me. I don't care about the political stuff. I just don't. I do not care about religion. I just don't. But what's happening, Paul, is the whole point.
Yep. And you need time to tell that story. You need to
absolutely.
15-year-old naive kid.
Really good special.
Oh, here we have, you have three different people. You have three completely different views of what they're taking from this book. And now you expect one director producer to try to hit that and hit the general audience that knows nothing about Dune.
Right.
And make it
successful.
That's why let's be honest, they don't give a crap about telling the story correctly. They
they want to put asses in
making money. Exactly. So that's their goal. Goal number one, get people to watch it. That's
and I still think that geeks and nerds in general have suffered from this, because they love holding up when they advertise their movie. This comes from the greatest science fiction book ever written.
Yeah, I never
heard people go into it and go,
it's lauded. Oh,
people go into it and, this is the best that science fiction can do. Go back to your basements.
I disagree. I mean, it's not the best.
I'm just saying.
No. But I'm saying,
my opinion.
That's how they sell it.
Yeah,
and that's how they sell it to the main
market.
No,
I mean, my brother-in-law is a huge Dune fan. He was the one that he bought me the book because he's like, "Oh, you got to read the book. Got to read this," and he's read them all and all that stuff, and he loves them. And he's not necessarily a sci-fi geek at all. I mean, he likes science fiction, but he reads other stuff. It's not just that, but. I read it and I was like, yeah, it's okay. And it just didn't really have it just didn't do it for me. I didn't want to go and read the subsequent novels.
Yeah.
Didn't have any interest to try and find out what happened.
Dune Messiah is a slog.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Children of Dune is awesome.
Again, I keep going back to Foundation. I would not recommend Foundation for everyone.
Right.
Foundation is a very specific. You have to enjoy that type of storytelling. And even then, I don't consider it. It's not an easy read. It's not something.
That's funny.
That you rip through.
It even says science fiction supreme masterpiece right there on the freaking cover of this
advertising. I mean, it doesn't.
Except for Rizzo.
By who? Who decided that?
Yeah, who decided this is the supreme?
There's like a council of.
Oh wait, hang on. There's a quote on the back. I know nothing comparable to it except Lord of the Rings. Arthur C. Clarke.
Well, And Lord of the Rings to me is more popular than this.
And Lord of the Rings is more popular.
I
Than
think,
this.
and I think Lord of the Rings hits more of a broader audience than Dune does.
Because the movie was done pretty well. Was
But
done
the
pretty
movies
well.
were much after.
It's
The
just-
Lord of the Rings was. I
Oddly
knew people.
dry.
There was
It's
Fairfield
pleasantly
University
dry.
had a whole class, a 3-credit class on Lord of the Rings.
Mhm.
A whole
Mhm.
class on 3 books.
Yeah, I
This
took that
is
in.
not- This is
I mean,
not palatable to everyone because it's
That's
just
what I'm saying. I think Lord of the Rings hits a broader audience.
Yeah,
It's
but Lord of
not-
the Rings
there's
isn't
other
palatable to
books
everybody either.
that tackle the same
No,
concepts as
but
Game
like
of Thrones.
But like the way I think Tolkien,
It's
where
just better.
Tolkien did it right, whether he did it intentionally or not, was The Hobbit is an easy read. Okay, if you like it, I read that as a kid, and I love The Hobbit, and I ripped
Right.
through it. When you got to Lord of the Rings, it slows down a little bit. It's more of a little more slug to get through what's going on. But you've already had that foundation of The Hobbit, so it's like, okay, I want to find out. You know what's going on because you know this universe already.
So we need a Paul in grade school primer
there you go.
to get you hooked on the Dune universe.
He's
And
like
then-
a Dune pop-up book.
right,
The
right.
Dune pop-up book. with
Your friend, the
sandworm.
sandworm.
The sandworm popping up. All right, let's do
All right,
Philadelphia.
let's do the last one. Let's say we got 10 minutes left. So, all right, so the current one with Zendaya and whoever the hell
Timothy
else. is in it.
Chalamet.
I like it. I like the fact that they're finally giving Chani some of her due, because she's a very powerful character in the book, along with Jessica, and the movies have not shown that at all to this point. I mean, Chani she's the power behind Paul,
She will.
and they haven't shown that in any respect. So I have high hopes for the second half of this one when it comes out. I think
preface that those that don't know, this is only like the first half of the story.
the first half of the first book. Yeah,
Right.
I have high hopes for her character in the second one. I think they picked a good actress to do it. I like the characterizations they have so far. I like the casting so far. Paul's got a lot of growing.
But I gotta agree. I'm not sure on Jason as Duncan.
Yeah, Duncan Idaho, but
I
he's
like
dead
Jason,
now.
don't get me wrong. I think he's good in the stuff that he's been in. But I don't know if he was the correct pick for this role. Didn't hate him.
I like this Duncan.
This one I do like this version. I think this one hits the mainstream the most. I want to say, believe it or not, I think if people
palatable.
watch it,
Even if you've never read it, you probably can understand what's going on mostly.
Right.
You may need some clarification.
Better than the Lynch thing.
Better than the Lynch thing. Although I understood what was going on.
The hard thing to judge about this is we haven't seen the end, and
Right.
It launched really well. It could go thundering in, or it could come for a very graceful landing. So it's difficult. I mean, I thought the miniseries really did a nice arc of beginning, middle, and end. This one seems to have a good beginning. The casting seems to be good. The so far so good, but we could come to a cliff. I don't know.
So this is a good. The current one doesn't explain; it just shows the action. That's why it's done well. I agree with you there, Bill. You're right, because this is the one I thought that they did the least explaining of the universe.
Actually, I would disagree, because I would think the miniseries actually did the least explaining of it. They sort of glossed over that part. This one did it in such a way that it didn't feel like exhibition. I don't know how they did it. I'd have to go back and look at the script, but they did it in such a manner that you got the information.
Some of it was Paul reading about Arrakis before he on Caladan. They showed a lot more Caladan in this one, and a lot of it was Paul not reading. He wasn't reading. He had that projector thing, and it projected information, and he was learning. So we kind of got exposition that way.
Yeah, one of the best scenes I think in recent times for exhibition was in the beginning of Serenity. If you knew nothing about the Firefly universe, there's the little scene there where they're sitting around and they get the explanation.
Earth was used up.
Yeah,
Yep.
and you do that. Why did they? And it came across as a dramatic scene. It was really just mainly exhibition.
Which you notice, it's funny if you watch the DVDs, they cut all that out. It's not in there.
Did they really?
Yeah.
I thought they did. I think it's still there.
The Blu-rays that I have doesn't. I don't think they have it in there. Maybe they.
The kids in the classroom thing.
No. That's you're thinking of Serenity the movie.
Yeah, that's what he's
Talking
saying.
about- I thought you were talking about the TV show where they said when
No,
the Earth was used
No,
up.
the
moved
movie.
out
If
to
you're
space.
coming into the movie cold, you don't know. It actually explained a lot more about the Firefly universe in that 5
Yeah,
minutes?
Yes, there's that,
Good
but
for
they
it.
always had that. But even in the TV show when it first aired, they had that little thing that would tell you first the Earth was used up, we moved out, we terraformed these other
Oh, yeah,
planets.
there's a little narration.
The inner
yeah.
planets became, this. The outer planets were rough, and then there was a big war, and that's where we are.
Yeah.
Right.
But no, Bruce is right. In the movie, there was that cute little.
There was the whole point, where she's going, we meddle. I know
Mhm.
that whole scene, which was a great scene, but
Yeah,
we're not talking about that movie.
I think that's how they that's what they borrowed in doing the Paul scene with the tutorial, doing a little bit of the exposition.
It's an effective way to get the information across without just
But he does it in the
having a
book.
scroll
Like,
at the beginning of the movie.
yeah, he
Yeah,
does it in
he's
the
got-
book. The
he's
scene,
got some
Episode
of
4,
things.
the scene where Gurney comes in to spar with Paul, that's exposition. The whole reason that scene exists is to explain some stuff to us. That's the
Yep.
only reason it exists.
How the shields work.
Yep.
What the families are doing. Yeah.
That's it. That's the only
Well,
reason.
technically, the whole book is exposition.
No, yeah.
Technically.
We don't got time.
I
for
have roads. I have all roads. Shall I do some roads?
that. Do some roads because we only.
Yeah.
Well,
Roads,
Where's
Dr.
that Stewart
Mabenga.
we
Oh,
know
just-
Patrick
oh.
Stewart. Big
Yeah,
road.
Patrick Stewart, which
Second road,
guys-
that way.
Can I just say I shared this gif? Everybody go find this gif. It's Patrick with the pug screaming, "Long live!" No, what is he screaming?
Atreides.
No, long live
Duke or something.
long live Duke Leto.
Long live Duke Leto, running into attack with the pug. No one ever talks about that or mentions it. I feel like it should be mentioned more. All right, moving on. Dr. Mabenga. Paul just killed him on a rock. That's Babs Olasanmukun. He played a character named Jameis. Ken Picard, we know, played Gurney. Alec Newman. Okay, Alec Newman played Paul in the miniseries, and he played Malik and Augment in the Enterprise episode. Did I write it down? I'm an idiot who did not write the episode down. It's an Enterprise episode. It's the one that explains why Klingons look different.
Yeah.
Alice Krieg, our favorite Borg queen, played Paul Atreides' mother, Lady Jessica, in the second of the two Dune miniseries that were broadcast on Sci-Fi City.
Yeah.
Most people associate the late Dean Stockwell with Scott Bakula from Quantum Leap, but he
was an Enterprise.
Was indeed in Enterprise. He did a character named Grat in the first season episode Detained. Stephen Burkoff. Who is that? And why am I talking? Oh, this one might not count because this one's some children in Dune. If you don't want me to do it, I will skip it. But he played a scene with Armin Shimmerman on Deep Space Nine as an arms dealer named Haggith in a Deep Space Nine episode, Business as Usual. Nobody cares. He played Stilgar. Brad Dourif. I love Brad Dourif. He's one of my favorites. He always plays a really creepy one. He played Wormtongue in Lord of the Rings. He played Lon Suitor, a renegade Betazoid, on 3 episodes of Star Trek Voyager, and he played Peter.
Peter DeVries.
In Sci-Fi Wire's exclusive interview, okay, this one's a weird one, and you guys tell me if you see it, because I do not see it. In Sci-Fi Wire's exclusive interview with Star Trek Prodigy showrunners Dan and Kevin Hageman, the two brothers said that this novel was a huge inspiration for Prodigy's villain, the Diviner, voiced by Fringe's John Noble. Do you guys see it? I do not see it. A quote from Dan Hageman is, "The Diviner is a nod to the floating alien, the Guild Navigator in Dune that they bring in who can mentally fold space and time for travel." Do you guys see this? I am not seeing this.
I don't get it.
I don't get it. Okay, Haberman.
Bruce spinning around. Bruce is spinning.
I would spin too because I see no Dune in Prodigy. There is Dune in many, many things. There's Dune in Star Wars. All kinds of Dune in Star Wars. There's a little Dune in Star Trek, maybe.
Combing the desert. There's
right.
Dune in Spaceballs.
There's literally desert.
There's Dune in Spaceballs. There's Dune here, there, and everywhere, but not in Prodigy.
Space movie that takes place on a desert. In a desert. Yeah. Anyway, Is that it?
That's all I've had. If you guys know any other roads,
So,
they're both
final
saying
thoughts on these 3 films. I don't really have a final thought. They're there again.
They're all arrows aimed at the same target.
I will watch the second half of the current
none of which
one.
actually hit the actual target, but they
None of
claim
which
the
hit the
consensus.
actual
Or
target.
marksman, they keep missing the
The
target.
target.
Yeah, I mean they are what they are. I mean, I think 84 did a good job for 84.
I'm okay with 84. I get.
I don't think it's as bad as
tells the
a
story.
lot of it. If you're a hardcore, fan of the book, I get that because I have books that I love, and if they make them into a movie and they screw it up, I definitely understand the angst about that. So, but as someone who's not
What's a favorite book, Rizzo, that they might make into a movie that you would?
that they might or they.
Yeah.
You guys are both here for.
We already had a whole show on this.
episode.
Yeah, that's true.
Everybody, go watch that show again.
Go watch that show if you want my opinion on that one.
Okay.
My quick rundown of the 3. Lynch, unwatchable. I forced myself through it again. It's really bad. If you enjoy the characters and you want to have the time to see some of these scenes, the miniseries is excellent. I really enjoy a lot of their choices that they made in that miniseries. But it is a TV miniseries, so it lacks in certain areas. The Villeneuve, I think, is an excellent start. I'm holding Final Judgment till the end, but I think it could be the definitive version of Dune on the film, the best that is possible to make of a very complicated book.
I'm going to echo that, Bruce. I agree with you on all those points. I do have high hopes for the second one. I hope that they stop there. But I know if it makes money, they're not going to. And I'm worried about that. But of the attempts thus far, the miniseries has all the fleshed out parts that it needs. I think that redone with the production values from the Villeneuve movies would be spectacular.
Ducky says bad Dune is better than known Dune. I gotta agree with that. I'm fine with Lynch. I have no problem with Lynch. It entertains me. It moves along. It keeps going. It held my interest. You know what?
It's almost 40 years old.
It's 40 years old. Holy crap, I'm old.
So we have to put that.
You know what it is, guys? My attention span is dwindling as I age. I'm having trouble concentrating.
I very rarely watch movies at home in one sitting,
which makes reading hard for me, and it makes long, drawn-out things excruciatingly difficult.
It's interesting you say about reading, because that's another thing. We say we read a book and we don't understand why they can't make this into a movie and have all this stuff in it. But think about when you read like how many pages do you generally read in a sitting, like a chapter, say 20 to 30 pages. And think about what that would translate into. A scene would be so short.
It would be like a scene.
You know what I'm saying? But it was like to get all. You know what I'm saying? It's like you of course, the movies. If you did it by the book, you'd have these 4-hour, 5-hour movies.
But I gotta get off of this whole 1984. It was 40 years ago and stuff, and it was good for 1984. Go back another 15 years, and I will still sit and watch 2001. And be awed by it on a large screen.
But you didn't have a novel. I mean, there is a novel, but the movie was written to be a movie. And we could do 2001 if y'all want to. I'm more than happy to do it, even though it's out of our general. But that movie did not play well with the general audience.
No one understood it.
No one understood it. It was slow.
As 525-77 just taught us.
Nothing really happened for long periods of time. Yes, it holds up.
And the ending,
again,
no one understood
hardcore.
that ending.
The average person, ask my wife, she's like, oh my God, this movie's like so boring.
Yeah.
So we see the genius in it, but the general audience doesn't. So it's not really a good example.
Effects with minimal dialogue.
What does amaze me is that here we are over 50 years later with 2001, and the effects still hold up. But
absolutely.
The effects are all linear. The ships move one direction. They don't. You get none of it.
That's true. It's not like
from one side. Anyway, we could do that if you guys want to.
Coming up. That's coming up. Phil I asked Phil if he had anything coming up. He never answered me. Roy, this Friday is Friday the 13th. Those of you who are into lucky and unlucky and whatever. And the Mega Millions is up to like 1.3 billion. So on Friday, the unlucky
It's on
13th,
Friday the 13th.
everybody go buy your Mega Millions ticket. Roy is doing the original Freaky Friday, which was 1976 or something with Jodie Foster. Check that out on Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi. And Rizzo, what do we have coming up
We are
next
doing
week?
actually. This is one of my favorite films. One of it's the 1996 is The Phantom with Billy
The
Zane and
Phantom.
Treat Williams and Christy Swanson, and our good friend Chris Loach is going to join us.
Yes,
Nice.
Chris
One of
Roach
his
will be
films.
here.
So,
Oh,
so
my
yeah,
God,
so I'm really
yeah.
looking forward to this one. I don't know why we haven't done it sooner. It is one of the movies I really enjoyed it. I remember seeing it in the theater. I loved it then. I still like it. I've seen it many times since then. This is kind of ranks right in the same genre as The Rocketeer. A lot of same feel to it. So anyway, we're gonna do that. So we'll see Chris. Remember, Chris was here for The Rocketeer.
Yes, Chris did
So,
here with us. Chris
It was over a year ago now. So Chris coming back now that he's all retired, and he doesn't have to. We don't have. It's just he can't
There's a
wait. So
wondering
anyway,
that Francis Ford Coppola Megalopolis is going to be sort of like Metropolis. It's about an architect, although Metropolis isn't really about an architect exactly.
I just read a guy. He made a good point about this Coppola movie. If you can get 5 people to put in $20 million, then you can get 5 million people to spend $20 to see it.
Of course, and that's what movies do. That's
Right.
that's
But
what
he didn't do that. I
but
think
that's an executive producer, right?
he's got this vision for this movie he wanted to make.
Yeah,
and
it is a
thrown his
passion
own money
project.
into it.
It's a self-admitted passion project.
Right, and he's left everybody who was helping him behind or driven them off.
I have a feeling this is going. If it ever gets made, it's going to be like what was that one that was based on the European comic book? I can never remember the
Valerian? Valerian and the
Valerian. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm feeling it's. I get the feel. I don't know why. It just feels like that.
Supposed
No,
to be
you're
epic,
right.
but really
It's supposed to be epic, and it goes. People go, "What the hell am I watching?"
That's what this was. This was supposed to be epic, and I'm still like, what the hell?
I like Valerian.
All right, it's way after 8:00. I don't want to keep you guys or our guests or anybody who's watching because hey, an hour of us is more than enough. So we will see you next week, guys. Thanks for joining us. Always a good discussion. Live long and prosper.
The spice must flow.
Spice must flow.
The sleeper has awakened.
Good night, folks.